I kept your drawing for 10 years because you were the boy I never forgot. Then why did my new landlord wait until now to tell me any of this? Because at 18, I waited by the football field for 2 hours, and you never came. I was home hiding this letter because I thought you wanted someone else. Then give me the letter and tell me whether we lost 10 years to fear.
6 days earlier, I opened my door expecting a repairman and found my unfinished past. Please tell me you are not my new landlord. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and for 3 long seconds, Noah Bennett just stood on the other side of my apartment door, staring at me like 10 years had not passed since the last time I had seen him. I had imagined running into Noah again more times than I would ever admit. In those imaginary reunions, I was successful, confident, wearing something expensive, maybe stepping out of a sleek car while he looked at me and realized exactly what he had missed. Reality was less generous. It was 8:13 on a Saturday morning. I was barefoot in gray sweatpants and an old University of Oregon t-shirt, and behind me my apartment looked like a small tornado had developed an interest in graphic design. Noah glanced at the toolbox in his hand, then back at me. That is not exactly the welcome I expected. His voice did it. One sentence, and suddenly I was 17 again, standing beside locker 214 while pretending to search my backpack because Noah Bennett was laughing with his friends 20 feet away. Noah? I finally managed. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. That smile had not changed. It was still slightly crooked, still unfairly effective at making my thoughts disappear. Everything else had changed. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe adulthood had simply settled comfortably onto him. His brown hair was shorter, his shoulders broader beneath a navy work jacket, and there were faint lines beside his blue eyes that had not existed when we were teenagers. But it was him. Definitely him. "Ethan Miller," he said. "I was wondering if it was you." That stopped me. "You knew. Your name was on the lease." "Right." Brilliant response, Ethan. Absolutely brilliant. Noah lifted the toolbox slightly. "And yes, unfortunately for you, I am your new landlord." My stomach dropped. 3 days earlier, I had received an email explaining that the duplex had been sold and that the new owner would be stopping by to inspect a plumbing problem under my kitchen sink. I had pictured someone named Gary who wore khakis and complained about property taxes. I had not pictured the boy I had spent most of high school trying desperately not to stare at. "You bought this place?" I asked. "My uncle owned it. I bought it from him." Noah looked past me toward the kitchen. He mentioned the leak. "Mind if I take a look?" "Sure." I stepped aside, then immediately noticed the coffee mug on the floor, 2 pizza boxes on the counter, and a laundry basket occupying the chair like a permanent tenant. "I usually live differently than this." Noah raised an eyebrow. "You do not have to impress your landlord." If only he knew how much of my adolescence had been dedicated to trying to impress him. I followed him into the kitchen, watching him kneel beside the sink and open the cabinet. This was absurd. 10 years ago, I could not work up the courage to say more than hello to Noah Bennett without rehearsing it first. Now he was under my sink. "So," I said, because silence was becoming dangerous, "are you living around here now?" "Very around here." He tightened something beneath the pipe. "I am moving into the upstairs unit." I stared at him. "Upstairs?" Noah leaned back and looked directly at me. "For a few months, at least. I am renovating it myself." Of course he was. My high school crush had not simply become my landlord. He was going to live 12 feet above my ceiling. Noah stood and wiped his hands on a small towel. Then his gaze drifted toward my desk, where a sketchbook lay open beside my laptop. Something softened in his expression. "You still draw when you are nervous." Every thought in my head stopped. I looked at the sketchbook, then at him. "You remember that?" Noah's eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary. "I remember more than you think, Ethan." For the rest of that morning, I kept hearing those 6 words in my head. "I remember more than you think, Ethan." Noah had said them casually, almost like they meant nothing, before turning back to the cabinet beneath my sink. But they did not feel casual to me. They felt like someone had opened a door I had spent 10 years carefully keeping shut. "There," Noah said a few minutes later. "Loose connection. Nothing serious." He turned on the faucet and watched the pipes for several seconds. "You should be good now." "Thanks." I leaned against the counter, trying very hard to behave like a normal 28-year-old man instead of the nervous teenager Noah somehow kept resurrecting. He closed his toolbox, but his attention returned to my sketchbook. "Graphic design?" he asked. "Mostly. Logos, packaging, advertising, whatever keeps the electric bill paid." "And the drawing?" "That keeps me sane." Noah smiled. "That sounds more like you." Again, there it was, that strange suggestion that he had known me better than I remembered. In high school, Noah had existed in a completely different orbit. He played soccer, knew everyone, and somehow managed to make teachers laugh, even when he arrived late. I was the quiet kid carrying a sketchbook between classes, happiest near the windows in the art room where nobody expected conversation. I had assumed Noah barely knew I existed. Apparently, I had been wrong about at least that much. Noah checked his phone. "I should get upstairs. The flooring delivery is coming around 10. "You are really doing the renovation yourself?" "Most of it. I run a small renovation company now." That made perfect sense. Even at 17, Noah had been the person teachers called when something needed fixing for a school event. I remembered watching him repair a crooked display board before homecoming while I pretended to paint a banner nearby. I remembered his sleeves pushed to his elbows. I remembered him asking if I wanted help carrying my supplies. I remembered answering no because my vocabulary disappeared whenever he smiled at me. "What?" Noah asked. I realized I had been staring. "Nothing. Just remembering something." His expression changed almost imperceptibly. "High school?" I nodded. "Feels like another lifetime." "Some parts do." He picked up the toolbox and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped beside my desk and glanced at the open sketchbook again. "You used to draw during chemistry." My heart stumbled. "How do you know that?" "You sat 3 rows ahead of me." "You sat behind me?" Noah laughed softly. "Ethan, we had chemistry together for an entire year. I wanted the floor to open beneath me. I remembered that classroom. I remembered Noah walking through the door every morning. Somehow, I had completely forgotten where he sat because I had been too busy making sure I never looked obvious when he passed my desk. "I guess my memory is selective," I said. "Mine is not." He opened the door. "See you around, neighbor." The word neighbor should not have sounded dangerous. Somehow, from Noah, it did. An hour later, footsteps moved across the ceiling above my living room. Each one reminded me that he was actually there. By noon, I gave up pretending to work and walked 3 blocks to Miller Street Coffee. I ordered my usual vanilla latte, opened my laptop, and tried to concentrate on a restaurant logo. I had managed exactly 4 lines when someone placed a paper cup beside my computer. "Still vanilla?" Noah asked. I looked at the cup, then slowly up at him. "How did you know?" He pulled out the chair across from me. "You ordered vanilla milkshakes every Friday after school." My chest tightened around a question I was suddenly afraid to ask. Noah remembered my drawings. He remembered where I sat. He remembered what I drank. 10 years ago, I had spent every day believing Noah Bennett never noticed me. Sitting across from him now, I began wondering whether I had misunderstood our entire past. Noah sat across from me as if sharing coffee after 10 years was the most ordinary thing in the world. I stared at the vanilla latte he had brought me, then at the man responsible for turning a perfectly normal Saturday into an archaeological excavation of my teenage feelings. "You seriously remember what I ordered after school?" I asked. Noah wrapped both hands around his black coffee. "Vanilla milkshake. No whipped cream." I narrowed my eyes. "That is unsettlingly specific." "I have a good memory. Apparently only for completely useless information." His smile appeared again. Maybe it was not useless to me. Before I could decide what that meant, Noah glanced toward my laptop. "What are you working on?" I turned the screen toward him. "Branding for a restaurant opening in Eugene. They want something modern but warm, which is client language for make it expensive without making it look expensive." Noah laughed, and the sound immediately transported me somewhere else. Westbrook High, senior year chemistry class. I was sitting 3 rows ahead of Noah, exactly where he had said. Mr. Patterson was explaining molecular bonds while I drew tiny buildings along the edge of my notebook. Someone behind me laughed quietly. Noah. I had known his laugh without needing to turn around. Back then, knowing little things about him had been my private specialty. He always arrived with damp hair after morning soccer practice. He tapped his pencil against his desk during tests. He bought peanut butter cookies from the cafeteria every Wednesday. I had collected those details without realizing that somehow he might have been collecting mine too. "Ethan?" Noah's voice pulled me back into the coffee shop. "Sorry, memory." "Chemistry again?" "Maybe." He leaned back. "You always drew when Mr. Patterson started talking about covalent bonds." I stared at him. "That is ridiculous." "What is? You remembering that?" Noah shrugged, but there was something careful in the movement. "You were interesting." I nearly dropped my cup. I was invisible. Not to everyone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Around us, the coffee shop carried on normally. The espresso machine hissed. Someone near the window typed rapidly. A little girl negotiated with her father for a second cookie. Meanwhile, my understanding of high school was quietly falling apart. Noah looked down at his coffee. "Do you remember the spring art show?" Of course I did. I had submitted a charcoal drawing of the old railroad bridge outside town. I had spent the entire evening standing near it while pretending not to care whether anyone stopped. "Barely," I lied. "You won second place." I blinked. "You remember that too?" "I voted for yours." Students did not vote. There was a People's Choice box. I had forgotten about that. "You voted for me." "3 times," I laughed. "That sounds like cheating." I was 17. My moral framework was still developing. The joke made me smile, but something warmer settled beneath it. I remembered that night differently now. I remembered Noah walking through the gymnasium with his friends. I had assumed he was there because everyone was there. I never knew he had stopped at my drawing. "Why?" I asked. Noah's expression softened. because it was good. That is not what I meant. He knew it. I could tell by the way his eyes shifted toward the window, but instead of answering, he stood. I should get back. I have about 600 square feet of flooring upstairs that will not install itself. I closed my laptop. Avoiding the question? Maybe. He carried his empty cup toward the trash, then stopped beside my chair. You still tilt your head when you are trying to figure someone out. I looked up at him. You remember too much. His smile faded into something quieter. Maybe you remember too little. Then he walked out, leaving me with a cold vanilla latte and a question that followed me all the way home. That evening, while Noah's footsteps moved softly above my ceiling, I opened an old storage box I had not touched since moving into the duplex. Beneath yearbooks, photographs, and graduation programs was a sealed envelope in my 18-year-old handwriting. On the front, written in faded blue ink, were two words I had spent 10 years trying to forget. Noah Bennett. The envelope stayed on my kitchen table until nearly midnight. I did not open it. I already knew what was inside because I had written every word during the spring of senior year, back when 18-year-old me believed putting a feeling on paper might somehow make it easier to say aloud. It had not. 10 years earlier, graduation had been 3 weeks away when I wrote that letter. I had spent an entire Sunday afternoon at my parents' dining room table crossing out sentences until the page looked like a battlefield of blue ink. Eventually, I settled on something simple. I told Noah I liked him. I told him I had liked him for longer than I wanted to admit. Most importantly, I asked whether he might want to get coffee with me after graduation, somewhere far enough from Westbrook High that neither of us had to worry about who was watching. I carried that envelope in my backpack for 11 days. Every morning, I promised myself that would be the day. Every afternoon, I found another excuse. Then, on the Friday before graduation, I saw Noah outside the gym with Claire Reynolds. Claire was beautiful, confident, and captain of the volleyball team. She hugged him, he smiled, and then she kissed his cheek. That was all I saw. It was also all my frightened 18-year-old brain needed. I went home, put the envelope inside a storage box, and never gave it to him. A week later, Noah left Oregon for college in California. I stayed. Life moved forward because that is what life does, even when part of you remains standing in a high school hallway holding a letter nobody ever read. A soft knock pulled me back to the present. I looked at the clock. 11:52. For one ridiculous second, I considered pretending to be asleep. Then Noah called through the door. "Ethan, your kitchen light is on." I quickly slid the envelope beneath a magazine and opened the door. Noah stood there wearing a gray sweatshirt, holding a small flashlight. "Everything okay?" I asked. "I was going to ask you the same thing. The weather service says a storm is moving in tomorrow night. I am checking the exterior windows before the rain starts." "At midnight?" I lost track of time upstairs. I smiled. Renovation company owner with terrible work-life balance? Graphic designer working at midnight should not judge. Fair point. Noah glanced toward my table, and I instinctively shifted sideways. His eyebrows lifted. "Are you hiding something?" "No." That sounded extremely convincing. "I am allowed secrets from my landlord." "Absolutely, unless the secret is an unauthorized golden retriever." I laughed despite myself. For a few seconds, everything felt unexpectedly easy. Then Noah looked toward the framed graduation photograph on my bookshelf. "Westbrook. My mother made me keep it." He stepped closer. "Graduation night was strange. My chest tightened. Strange how? Noah studied the photograph instead of me. I kept expecting something to happen. The room suddenly felt too quiet. What kind of something? He turned toward me and that familiar, careful expression returned. I thought someone was going to talk to me. My fingers went cold. Who? Noah looked directly at me. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen and sighed. Contractor. Sorry, I need to take this. He moved toward the door, then paused. We can finish this conversation another time. Sure. I waited until his footsteps disappeared upstairs before returning to the kitchen table. My hand slowly found the envelope beneath the magazine. For 10 years, I had believed I was the only person waiting for something that graduation night. Now I was no longer certain, and for the first time since I wrote it, I broke the seal. I unfolded the letter with the kind of care people usually reserve for old photographs. The paper had yellowed slightly at the edges, but my handwriting was unmistakable, narrow and nervous. Every sentence written by a version of me who had believed rejection would be worse than never knowing. Reading it 10 years later, I discovered something uncomfortable. 18-year-old Ethan had been braver on paper than 28-year-old Ethan was in person. I read the final line twice. I would like to know you when neither of us has to pretend anymore. I sat there until rain began tapping softly against the kitchen window. By morning, the storm had settled over Portland beneath a ceiling of dark gray clouds. The wind pushed wet leaves along the street, and by late afternoon, the rain had become steady enough to blur the houses across from mine. I spent most of the day working or pretending to work, while the old letter remained hidden inside my desk drawer. Around 7, the lights flickered. At 7:15, they went out completely. Perfect, I muttered into the darkness. I found my phone and turned on its flashlight. Less than a minute later, someone knocked. Please tell me you have electricity upstairs, I said as I opened the door. Noah stood beneath the porch light, which had apparently decided to survive on some separate circuit. He held a camping lantern in one hand and a paper grocery bag in the other. No electricity upstairs either, but I have grilled cheese supplies. That is suspiciously prepared. I checked the forecast. Of course you did. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at my kitchen table beneath the warm glow of the lantern, eating grilled cheese sandwiches Noah had made on my gas stove. Without laptops, television, or excuses, conversation became unavoidable. We talked about ordinary things first. Work, Portland traffic, the strange collection of ceramic birds my previous landlord had left in the backyard. Then Noah asked, "Did you ever want to leave Oregon?" I considered it. Sometimes. You did. California was supposed to fix everything. His voice became quieter. I thought leaving would make me figure myself out. Did it? Noah smiled without much humor. Eventually, just not quickly. Rain rattled against the windows. He looked down at his coffee. High school was complicated for me. Something in his tone made me stop moving. You always seemed pretty confident. That was mostly practice. He traced one finger around the rim of his mug. I spent years trying to be the version of myself everyone expected. Soccer, the right friends, dating girls because that was easier than explaining why I kept noticing guys. For a second, the storm seemed to disappear. You are gay? I asked, immediately wishing I had sounded less shocked. Noah looked up. Yes. Every assumption I had carried since senior year shifted at once. Claire Reynolds kissing his cheek, the unopened letter, my certainty that I had understood exactly what I was seeing. I did not know, I said. Almost nobody did. When did you figure it out? Before graduation. His eyes stayed on mine. Accepting it took longer. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. Noah leaned slightly closer, not enough to cross any boundary, just enough that I noticed. There was someone back then, he said. Someone I wanted to tell. My breath caught. What happened? I waited too long. The light suddenly came back, flooding the kitchen with brightness. We both blinked, and the moment broke like a dream interrupted by an alarm clock. Noah stood slowly and collected our plates. I should check the breaker upstairs. At the doorway, he looked back at me. Good night, Ethan. Good night. He left, and I remained beside the table, staring at the chair he had occupied. 10 years ago, I had hidden my feelings because I thought Noah could never return them. Tonight, I had learned that Noah had been hiding something too. The only question left was who he had been hiding it from. For the next 3 days, Noah somehow became part of my routine without either of us acknowledging that it was happening. On Monday morning, I found a coffee outside my door with a note telling me the renovation crew would arrive at 9 and apologizing in advance for the noise. On Tuesday, he knocked to ask whether the music upstairs was too loud, then stayed in my doorway for 20 minutes, talking about a restaurant he thought I would like. By Wednesday, I had stopped pretending I did not listen for his footsteps above me. That was the dangerous part. Noah was becoming familiar again, except this time I was not 18 and watching him from across a crowded hallway. This time he noticed me back. That evening, I came home carrying 2 grocery bags and found him on the front porch measuring a window frame. Need help? He asked. I have successfully transported groceries before. The bottom of one paper bag immediately tore. 3 oranges rolled across the porch. Noah looked at me. I looked at the oranges. You saw nothing. Absolutely nothing. He crouched to collect them, laughing, and I laughed too. It felt easy. Too easy. We carried everything inside, and while I put groceries away, Noah leaned against the counter and told me about a renovation disaster involving 17 different shades of white paint. I barely heard the ending because I kept thinking about the night of the storm. There was someone back then. Someone I wanted to tell. Every time Noah looked at me, the question returned. Finally, I turned from the refrigerator. About the other night. His expression changed. What about it? The person you mentioned from high school. Noah became very still. What about him? Him. One small word, and somehow the room felt different. Nothing, I said too quickly. I was just curious. Noah studied me with that same expression he had used at the coffee shop. You always do that. Do what? Ask a question and retreat before someone answers. I folded the empty grocery bag even though it did not need folding. Maybe I learned to manage expectations. Noah stepped closer, stopping several feet away. Maybe expectations are not always wrong. I looked at him. For one suspended moment, neither of us moved. There were no lockers between us, no classmates, no 10 years of distance. Just Noah standing in my kitchen, looking at me like he was finally going to say the thing I had once been too afraid to say myself. Then his phone rang. He closed his eyes briefly. I have to take this. It is about the property. I nodded and turned toward the counter, giving him privacy while he stepped onto the porch. I was not trying to listen. At least, that is what I told myself until I heard him say, "Yes, after the renovation is finished." A pause followed. Then, I understand. If the numbers make sense, selling the duplex is still an option. My hands stopped moving. Selling. I stared at the grocery bag in front of me as Noah continued speaking outside. Suddenly, every warm moment from the past few days rearranged itself into something temporary. The coffee, the conversations, the storm, the way he remembered me. Noah had left Oregon once before, and apparently I had forgotten how easily people could leave again. He returned a minute later. Sorry about that. No problem. My voice sounded distant even to me. Noah frowned. Are you okay? Fine. Just tired. Ethan. I have work to finish. I hated how quickly I had rebuilt the wall between us, but I hated the alternative more. Noah watched me for a long second before quietly picking up his tape measure. All right. I will let you work. After he left, I stood alone in the kitchen listening to his footsteps climb the stairs. For the first time since he arrived, I wished I could not hear them. I had spent 10 years regretting that I never gave Noah my letter. I was beginning to wonder whether some doors stayed closed for a reason. I avoided Noah for 2 days, which was surprisingly difficult when he lived directly above me and apparently believed staircases were designed specifically to create awkward encounters. I left early for coffee, worked later than usual, and developed an impressive ability to check the mailbox only when his truck was gone. It was childish, and I knew it. But distance felt safer than asking a question whose answer might confirm exactly what I feared. On Friday afternoon, I returned from a client meeting and found a large white envelope taped to my apartment door. My name was written across the front in Noah's handwriting. My stomach sank. For several seconds, I simply stood there holding my laptop bag, staring at it. The property, selling the duplex, is still an option. Suddenly, the meaning seemed obvious. Noah was selling, and this was probably the notice telling me how much time I had left. I carried the envelope inside and placed it on the kitchen table. Apparently, envelopes and I had a complicated relationship. 10 years ago, I had been afraid to give one away. Now I was afraid to open one. Eventually, I slid my finger beneath the flap and pulled out several pages. The first words I saw were lease renewal agreement. I blinked. I read them again. Renewal, not termination. I scanned the document. 12 months. Same monthly rent. No increase. I was halfway through reading it a second time when something smaller slipped from between the pages and landed on the table. It was a folded piece of cream-colored paper, worn soft at the edges. I opened it carefully. The moment I saw the drawing, I forgot how to breathe normally. It was mine. A tiny pencil sketch of the old railroad bridge outside our hometown, no bigger than a postcard. In the bottom corner were my initials and the year. I remembered drawing dozens of little versions while preparing for the spring art show. I had given some away to teachers and friends. I did not remember giving one to Noah. On the back, beneath my faded initials, someone had written one sentence in blue ink. You should have won first place. A knock sounded at the door. I opened it and found Noah standing on the porch. You got the lease? He asked. I held up the sketch instead. His expression immediately changed. Where did you get this? You put it in the envelope. I know. I mean originally. Noah looked almost embarrassed. The art show. You left a stack of practice sketches beside your display. I asked if I could take one. I searched my memory. Then something surfaced. Noah standing near my table. Me being too nervous to look directly at him. A voice asking, "Can I have this?" I had assumed he needed scrap paper. You kept it for 10 years? I asked. Noah nodded. Through college, 3 apartments, 2 houses. Why? He looked at me with an expression that made every excuse I had built over the past 2 days feel suddenly fragile. You know why? I shook my head. No, I do not. I thought I understood things once, and apparently I was wrong about almost everything. Noah stepped onto the porch but did not come closer. Is that why you have been avoiding me? I hesitated. I heard you talking about selling the duplex. Understanding crossed his face. Ethan, I was talking to my accountant. My uncle originally wanted me to renovate and resell it. I have not decided what I am doing. So you might leave. This is not about the building. His voice softened. You keep expecting me to disappear before I have even gone anywhere. The next 5 minutes dismantled everything I believed about high school. Noah admitted the sketch had followed him through college, 3 apartments, and 2 houses because he had never forgotten me. When I asked why my new landlord had waited until now, he told me about graduation night, 2 hours beside the football field, expecting me. I lifted the old envelope and folded letter and confessed that I had been home hiding it because I thought he wanted someone else. Noah held out one open hand and asked for the envelope. He did not step closer. He waited. For once, the choice was mine. I placed the envelope in his open hand. Noah did not unfold the letter immediately. First, he told me the pieces of senior year I had missed. He had liked me, but he had spent high school protecting the version of himself everyone expected. Claire knew he was gay and had kissed his cheek to wish him luck with me. He had noticed my drawings sophomore year, remembered chemistry and vanilla milkshakes, and voted for my bridge at the art show. A mutual friend told him I wanted to speak after graduation, so he waited by the football field until almost 11. I never came because I was home sealing this confession inside a cardboard box. Only then did Noah unfold the letter. I watched his eyes move across words written by the boy I used to be. When he reached the final line, he became completely still. You wanted coffee? He asked. That was my grand romantic plan. I would have said yes. 4 words. 10 years late, and somehow they still reached the part of me that had been waiting to hear them. Noah folded the letter carefully and gave it back. I wish we had been braver. We were kids. We are not kids anymore. His eyes held mine, and there was no uncertainty in them now. He stepped closer, then stopped, leaving enough distance for the choice to remain mine. I do not want another 10 years of wondering what would have happened. I swallowed. Neither do I. Noah smiled, softer than I had ever seen him smile in high school. Then let me take you for that coffee. I looked at the old letter in one hand and the sketch in the other, 2 pieces of a story that had almost never happened. Okay, I said. But there is one problem. His eyebrows rose. What? I glanced toward the lease sitting on my kitchen table. You are still my landlord. Noah followed my gaze, and for the first time that evening, neither of us had an easy answer. For several seconds, Noah and I stood there looking at the lease as if it had personally interrupted the most important conversation of our lives. Then Noah nodded slowly. You are right. I had expected disappointment, maybe an argument. Instead, he stepped back and gave me space. I do not want you wondering whether rent, repairs, or this building have anything to do with whatever happens between us. Relief came first, followed by something warmer. So what do we do? I asked. We do this properly. The next morning, Noah called the property management company his uncle had used before selling him the duplex. By Monday, they agreed to handle my lease, rent payments, maintenance requests, and every other tenant issue. Noah still owned the building, but he would no longer be the person making day-to-day decisions about my apartment. It was not a perfect wall between our lives, but it was enough to make one thing clear. If Noah asked me out, I could say yes or no without my home being part of the answer. 3 days later, he knocked on my door at 6:30 in the evening. When I opened it, he was wearing a dark blue button-down shirt instead of work clothes. "Ethan Miller," he said with exaggerated seriousness. "Would you like to get coffee with me?" I folded my arms. "At 6:30 at night? I waited 10 years. I am not waiting until breakfast." I laughed. "Then yes." We walked 4 blocks to a small coffee shop near Hawthorne Boulevard, where I ordered vanilla and Noah ordered black coffee because apparently some things were determined before adulthood. We talked for almost 3 hours. Not about high school, at least not much. We talked about who we had become after it. Noah told me about starting his renovation company with 1 truck, borrowed tools, and more confidence than experience. I told him about quitting an agency job that made me miserable and becoming a freelance designer. We discovered that the people we had imagined from a distance as teenagers had never really existed. The real versions were more complicated, less polished, and much easier to love. Weeks passed, then months. Noah finished renovating the upstairs unit but did not sell the duplex. He told me he had decided he liked building things meant to last more than flipping them for profit. I pretended not to hear the second meaning. We took things slowly. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, Sunday walks along the river, and evenings on the front porch arguing about whether his renovation playlists were terrible. They were. By spring, the old fear I carried around Noah had changed into something quieter. I no longer wondered whether he noticed me. I knew he did. One evening, almost a year after that first unexpected knock, I found him sitting on the porch steps with 2 coffees. He handed me mine. Vanilla, of course. "I found something upstairs," he said. From his jacket pocket, he removed the little railroad bridge sketch. He had placed it inside a simple wooden frame. "You framed it?" "I told you. You should have won first place." I sat beside him, smiling. "You really are never letting that go." "Absolutely not." The evening air was cool, and neighborhood lights were beginning to glow along the street. Noah looked at me. "Do you ever think about how much time we lost?" "Sometimes." "Does it bother you?" I considered the question. Once, the answer would have been yes. Now I shook my head. We cannot change who we were at 18. I looked at the man beside me. But we get to decide who we are now. Noah smiled and reached for my hand. This time I did not retreat. 10 years earlier, 2 frightened boys had stood on opposite sides of the same possibility, each waiting for the other to open the door. We never did. But life, somehow, brought that door back to me. And when Noah Bennett knocked again, I finally understood that some second chances do not arrive to fix the past. They arrive to give you the courage to stop living inside it. Would you have trusted Noah after learning he was also waiting? Or would the landlord relationship have made you walk away? Tell me which moment decided your answer. If this story stayed with you, please like it and share it with someone who believes second chances require clear boundaries.